much for that report. Now, away from that, and the Communication Authority of Kenya has actually suspended the merger between Telkom Kenya and Airtel, pending further investigations by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption over allegation of corruption. This is to allow investigations on how that deal was brokered. Let's just cross over and listen in live to what is currently being said.
Today, to be able to create a credible competitive market, which is what consumers and customers and Kenyans need. So, the combined entity, Airtel Telkom, would also see more investment into the joint networks to further accelerate the rollout of future technologies. So there will be further investment post this transaction. And the clients of Airtel Telkom's joint enterprise and carrier businesses would benefit from a larger fiber footprint and a diverse portfolio of world-class solutions. All this, of course, will only be possible upon receiving the requisite regulatory approvals. So it is important that we emphasize what is most important is that the regulatory approvals, which are the focus of everybody, and they are very important, are about establishing an entity that will be able to offer customers and consumers and Kenyans more choice, more innovative services than they have today. On the 10th of May, first let me say that after the announcements we made in February, we made the necessary applications to the necessary regulatory approving authorities. And on the 10th of May of this year, 2019, the CA, the Communications Authority, communicated to us a conditional board approval. On the 12th of July, 2019, the Communications Authority issued a Gazette notice expressing its intention to grant approval of the proposed transaction that merges some of the Telkom and Airtel businesses. In the Gazette notice, the regulator asked any parties opposed to the intended merger to make submissions within 30 days. This is a statutory requirement. And that Gazette notice lapsed on Monday, August 12th, 2019. In the interim period, we, both Telkom and Airtel, have proceeded to expedite on the requirements raised by the regulator to ensure that the proposed transaction was fully compliant with the law. On the 31st of July, 2019, Telkom Kenya issued a 1-month notice of redundancy to its employees, informing them of the intention to terminate the employment of approximately 575 of its staff complement, subject to regulatory approval on account of redundancy. This as a result of and in order to facilitate the transaction. This action is in line with the law and a process that has to be undertaken before employees are able to be moved to another entity. Remember that Telkom Kenya and the envisioned combined entity are separate legal entities. And that is why this process was necessary. Again, a process dependent on regulatory approvals. Subsequently, that is post executing the termination, the intention remains and will be to advertise and interview Telkom employees for positions in the combined entity and its outsourced partners. Engagement of these employees will be guided by the combined entity's recruitment criteria as well as the mapped positions therein. So it is important to understand the sequencing of these processes, that the intended retrenchment is a precursor to an exercise of engaging some, actually most of those employees, not all, into the combined entity. Now, on the 14th of August 2019, Telkom Kenya was in receipt of a request from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to furnish the Commission with information in connection with investigations the EACC is carrying out on allegations of misappropriation of public funds in the process of the recapitalization and restructuring of the balance sheet of Telkom Kenya in 2012. This investigation now impacts the progress of the intended transaction, as the requisite regulatory bodies have since been put a pause on the approval process. Now, what's the impact of this delay? Further delay to the approval of this transaction could find Kenya staring at the potential of reversion of the telco sector into a monopoly, impacting negatively on the welfare of the consumer and the economy. A monopoly, I will remind everybody, poses a systemic risk of price increases, innovation inertia, and a stunted market, a stunted telecom market, owing to the lack of competition, which ultimately leaves a consumer with little and actually no choice, frankly speaking. The transaction would see the intended engagement, this transaction, which hopes to see the engagement of employees from Telkom into the combined entity and its outsourced partners, is hampered by this delay, and those employees will be left in limbo. This integral component of the transaction now leaves the future of our staff and the dependents hanging precariously in the balance. So this is the impact of the delay that we're talking about. Further, on the 30th of August, which was last Friday, the dominant player in our sector, Safaricom, which controls more than 90% of the industry's revenue share, informed the media that it had written to the Communications Authority to urge the industry regulator not to approve the intended merger of businesses, as it had concerns that it wanted to address first. As I have mentioned, the intended merger of some of our businesses with Airtel will result in the formation of an entity with enhanced scale that will enable Kenya's telecom sector have one last stab at a competitive environment, despite pretty tough forces at play. Now, we have no quarrel with our colleagues at Safaricom. We are simply trying to restructure and improve our own businesses. It is unfortunate, however, that Safaricom now wants to delay this process that seeks to provide customers with credible options. Does the dominant player not want to see this sector grow? Is the dominant player wary of competition and, even more precisely, wary of competitive pricing, choice, and value for money for the consumer? In a stunted market, which would be the result of this transaction not progressing, competitive pricing does not exist due to the existence of a single player. Price dictation becomes the order of the day. Choice lacks. In a single-player market, the consumer would lose out on options to cater for the dynamic needs and wants within their budgets. There is innovation inertia when you have a single-player market. When you have a single player, there's no urgency to innovate new products and solutions that are meant to better the consumer's telecommunications experience. In a stunted market environment, the telco sector will not grow and expand, which could lead to Kenya's telco sector losing out on its leadership role in this region. And most importantly, investors would be loath to invest in such a market. What we're talking about here, therefore, is not trivial. It is not about Telkom Kenya or Airtel or Safaricom. It is about the telecom sector as a whole, and it is about our country. With regard to the ongoing narrative of the EACC, the Anti-Corruption Commission investigations, we have given the EACC all the information they have requested and will continue to cooperate on the matter up until a substantive conclusion is reached. Having said that, let me reiterate that the current transaction between Telkom and Airtel is still an ongoing process, as I have enumerated. I have indicated the date we made the announcement on the intention to merge our businesses, at which point we indicated we would be making applications to the relevant regulators. We have made those applications. Certain milestones, as I have indicated, have been met, but we still await the final approval from the regulators. And we intend not to do anything that prejudices those approvals. Every action we have taken has been clearly made subject to these approvals and in a very transparent manner. In addition, we issued the required transfer of business notice as guided by the Kenya Transfer of Business Act, TBA, a few months ago. In all, we have a process in which we have been at pains and very explicit in guiding both our staff, customers, the media, and various stakeholders as we take each particular process. But I think I want to underline the fact it remains an ongoing process. What we want to see for a telco sector that is regarded the leader in the region, delayed action on this process, on a process that is meant to ensure continuity of this industry, to ensure that this industry begins to thrive with respect to competition, would be harmful and not good for this country. This industry is ailing, and all stakeholders need to open their eyes to this reality. I will reiterate that we call on all relevant regulatory bodies and stakeholders to play their part expeditiously. Their action or inaction now dictates the future of two businesses, its staff, its partners, and its customers. And the reality of a reversion to a monopolistic environment is staring Kenya's telco sector in the face. We cannot continue to bury our head in the sand. The time has come for decisive, firm action to be taken to ensure that a failed telco market is now made to thrive. Operating in such a skewed environment as exists today is not sustainable anymore. It's completely unsustainable. Which is why both actors, the two players, came together in the first place. It is now therefore unfortunate that the dominant player appears bent on denying Kenyans choice, the chance to still enjoy the benefits brought about by an alternative, credible, stronger player, and therefore choice for Kenyan consumers. The presence of a strong second player is bound to give Kenyans value for money. And even as I say this, the action we are undertaking as Airtel and Telkom to combine the businesses, the critical businesses of the number 2 and number 3 player, in order to create a stronger second player, are insufficient. We still need more to be done on the policy and the regulatory space in order to make sure that that choice is afforded to Kenyan consumers and customers. That really is the import of all that we're trying to do. And that must not be lost on Kenyans, regulators, policymakers, the media, the public, all of us as a nation. That what we really want to do is to ensure a thriving, healthy telecom market sector that affords choice to the consumer, innovation to the consumer, and allows Kenya to participate, the Kenyan telco sector, to participate in the ongoing developments of technology globally.
Right, right on your screen is the live coverage of that press conference by the Telkom CEO Mugo Kibati, who's actually, raising concern over the decision to delay the merger between Telkom and Airtel, actually accusing their competitor of trying to delay the process, and is now urging the relevant authorities in the country to ensure that the merger goes on as planned. Remember, this merger was supposed to happen early this year, but then EACC has actually come in to investigate the merging process based on allegations of corruption. This suspense has been, the merger between Airtel and Telkom has been announced, has been put